Hello everyone, welcome back to the course. So today we'll be talking about a pretty simple and interesting concept, that is if statements. So we'll be talking about if, else if, nested if statements. Okay, so if statements define the control flow of a program. Okay, how the program flows from one part to another. Okay, so the syntax of if statement is basically you can write if condition. Okay, if condition, and you need to always finish this with a semicolon, and you can write a block of code here. Okay, and you can, if you want, you can follow it up with an else statement. So else statement is always, referring to the fact that this condition was not true. Okay, then there is another block of code. So this is the if block of code and this is the else block of code. Okay, so this is what the structure looks like. Okay, so firstly we define if a condition. Okay, and then if it's true, then we enter this part of the code, whatever is written inside this box. We can have any number of statements, print statements, and whatever inside. Okay, if this condition is never true, then we never enter this box. Okay, we never go into this. Okay, likely we'll be entering this box, else box, where it's all uh, by the definition of the condition and if else statement, it's implied that this condition was not true. Then we'll be entering another block of code which will be called the else block, and you can have n number of lines talking about printing whatever operation you want to be performing right here. So this is the code. Okay, so remember the syntax: if any condition, if block, else block of code. Okay, so this is the syntax of if else statement. Okay, now let's see a use case for this if else in a basic program. So I want to write a program to check if a user is eligible to vote for or not. Okay, so basically the voting age, let's define that the if a person is above 18 years old, he's eligible to vote. Okay, else he's not eligible. So I'm going to define age, and I'm going to say that age is let's say 15. Okay, so I'm going to say if age greater than 18, print you can vote. Okay, else just print you can't vote. Okay, so when I run this code, it's going to tell me that you can't vote. Why? Because age is 18. So if statement will be true only if age is above 18. So since this condition was never satisfied, we are never entering this block of code. Okay, so we directly move to else block, which says you can't vote. Okay, so if I now enter my age as 20, okay, obviously 20 is greater than 18, so this condition is satisfied. So now I'll be entering my if statement. So now I'll be getting the output you can vote. Okay, so this is a very simple program. So let's talk about input statements too. So I didn't cover that in the last lecture. So instead of me giving the age, let's ask the user to give the age. So I'm going to say input, and I'm going to display a message: enter your age. Right, simple, right? So input is referring to an input from the user, and this is the message that will be displayed before: enter your age. And we'll be taking that as the input and we'll be storing it in this variable called age. So instead of me giving the program what the age is, now I'll be asking the user to do so. So enter your age. So I'm going to say 20 again. Okay, so this will, okay, this was an interesting thing that I forgot to mention. So whenever we use input statements, we normally are talking about input in the form of string. Okay, so there's a difference between an age like 20 and 20. So this 20 is a string and this 20 is an integer. Okay, so when you just take input as it is, you're going to run into an error. Okay, so this was a miscite on my part. So so since this is a string, I want to convert it to an input, I mean an integer, right? So we have learned how to do that before, right? When we learned type conversion. So just go and type int in front of your input statement. So whatever input you get, which will be a string, I'm just saying convert it to an integer. So now this program will work without a hitch. Okay, so enter your age. I'm going to enter 20 and it says you can vote. That's pretty cool, right? Now, what if the user enters an invalid age, right? So obviously the age should be between 0 to maybe 105. Technically, even 0 is not really valid because a newborn baby is not typing his or her age, right? But for the simplicity, let's assume 0 to 105, which means if the user types a negative age or an age which is greater than 105, they're probably goofing around, right? So I don't want that. So I want a condition in the middle. So now, right now, if I, just play around and type -1, it says you can vote. You can't vote, right? Because um, this is the else block, but technically it should give me an error because how can age be negative, right? So that's not correct. So we need another case. So this is where nested if statements come in. Okay, so right now I have one basic if statement and if not the condition else. So what about times when I have multiple conditions? Wouldn't it be convenient if I had other if statements? So I'm going to write elif. You can read it as else if followed by a condition saying age less than 0. Then print please enter a valid age. Okay. Now if I were to enter -1, it's going to go inside this statement. Okay, this part of the code because it's not fulfilling this condition, but it's fulfilling this. So we have got an error here. Okay, I can also write another elif statement. Elif age um, greater than 105. Okay, this would not work the way you're expecting it to, but I'm going to explain it to you later. Again, I'm going to say enter valid age. Now, this won't work the way you're expecting it to. I'm going to tell you this beforehand, and let's see why it's not going to. So, if I say 106, it's going to say you can vote. That's because you have returned this condition before. So, as soon as you get the program started, you're going to go inside this if statement. It's going to say 106 obviously greater than 18. So you will say you can vote and exit the program. So it didn't work the way we intended it to. So the way we wanted it to work was we should first check this condition, right? If the age is greater than 105, then we immediately exit it, right? Instead of again, obviously an age which is greater than 18 will be eligible to vote. So as soon as you write this as the first condition, you never reach this. So this is important when you're writing elif statements. You need to make sure that you're writing conditions in the correct order. So otherwise you will be running into this type of problem. Okay, so I'm going to write this condition in the beginning. So if age greater than 105 here. Okay, so I'm going to say enter a valid age. Okay, enter a valid age. Okay, I'm running into some trouble with my keyboard. Okay, so I'm going to say print enter valid age. Elif age is just greater than 18. You can just print you can vote. You can vote. Okay, so now this program will work the way I intended to. So 106 immediately it's going to enter this command, enter valid age, right? So we are going to immediately catch this test case and we are going to exit our program safely. So it's just going to give me enter valid age. Now if I write something like 35, which is a valid age, it will just say you can vote, since we are in this part of the code. So this was to understand the flow code. That's the control flow of the program. How does the program, which part of it is read in which block of if, elif code, and the final else code. So one thing you need to remember is whenever you give if and elif statements, you always need to specify a condition. Always. Okay, but when you're writing the else statement, you should not specify any condition, because by definition you're implying that this is the last test case where you know it's just not anything. Okay, you can't vote. Okay, so you cannot have a condition again here. That would give you an error. Okay, you can't just write some condition here. This is supposed to be the last condition that you can think of. Okay, so that's it for if statements, guys. So in this lecture we learned how to take input from the user, how we can go with the control flow of a program. So I hope you found this lecture interesting. So next class we'll be discussing I think for loops. Okay, so see you then. Thank you.